After being poisoned by mushrooms, I saw myself playing hide and seek with a group of handsome guys, and was taken to the emergency room. The young and handsome, attending physician gently asked, "Tell me, what did you see?" I suddenly hugged him and laughed foolishly. "Got you. Oh, little brother, you look just like my husband who's outside." He smiled back, his lips curving beautifully. "You have a husband? Then you can't hug me." I was so enchanted that I lost my senses. "Divorce. I'll leave him right away to be with you." When I woke up again, I found the world had collapsed. My husband, who was always out, looked indifferent and said, "So, does your husband agree to divorce you?" In the emergency room, my best friend and Christopher looked at me, who was having a great time playing with imaginary air, and said helplessly, "You ate some undercooked mushrooms and got poisoned, and now you're like this." I was lost in the joy of playing hide and seek with a bunch of handsome guys, completely oblivious to my surroundings, until a clear and gentle voice rang in my ears. "Toby Ferguson, tell me what you see." I stared at him for a second, then automatically ignored what he said and suddenly hugged his strong waist. "Got you." And Christopher face-palmed beside me. "Toby Ferguson, don't you want to see who you're hugging?" I looked up and recognized the handsome face with delicate features, dazedly saying, "Little brother, you look just like my husband who's outside." While I said this, I pinched his abs, thoughtlessly exclaiming, "Wow, your abs are so hard, they feel amazing." He paused for a moment, then smiled beautifully. "You have a husband? Then you can't hug me." I was immediately enchanted by his mesmerizing smile, waving my hand. "Divorce. I'll leave him right away to be with you." And Christopher couldn't bear to watch any longer. "Blair Jenny, you take care of her. Don't take what she just said to heart, I'll just..." But I wasn't going to let her off that easily. I pointed a finger to silence her lips. "SHH, there are a few other handsome guys, who are super hot. There's one without clothes, who looks like a tease. I know you like that type, just wait, I'll find him for you to play with." And Christopher, she sighed in exasperation, gave me a look of self-preservation, and quickly fled the scene. I didn't care, preparing to immerse myself in my imaginary games again. A pair of strong hands stopped me. "You rogue, isn't one enough?" He sighed lightly, speaking in a tone like he was coaxing a child. "Be good, let's go get your stomach pumped first." I rebelliously replied, "Stomach pump? I don't want that. Let's take a shower instead." "You go ahead, I'll wait for you in bed, Tilda. Behave, or you'll feel worse later. Then you promise me, after it's done, you'll let me have my fun with you. Deal?" When I regained consciousness, it was already night. I stared quietly at the ceiling, memories from a few hours ago flooding back. After a minute, I calmly closed my eyes. Awake. Feeling better now. Feigning sleep didn't work, so I obediently opened my eyes. Yes, much better. At this moment, my husband, Blair Jenny, was sitting beside me, smiling gently. "So, when do you plan to tell your husband about us?" Under his serious expression, I picked up my phone, feeling guilty. Let me just call and check." I turned my back to him, and immediately called in Christopher for help. As soon as the call connected, I lowered my voice and complained, "You stupid girl. Why didn't you stop me back then? Come to the hospital and take me away, I'm so embarrassed." And Christopher sounded gleeful. "I tried to stop you, but who knew eating a mushroom would send you off the rails? I couldn't hold you back. TSK, and talking about hard abs. You usually eat well." I helplessly closed my eyes. "Please, just let me quietly die. Come on, it's not a big deal. Your husband usually seems gentle and humble, and he clearly has a good temper. Just act a little spoiled, he'll definitely forgive you." I hesitated. "Do you think it'll work?" "Definitely." After hanging up, Blair Jenny casually asked, "So, did he agree to divorce you?" His expression was so calm, as if he had no clue that he was my husband. I prepared myself mentally and exhaled. Can you come a little closer?" He raised an eyebrow and obediently drew nearer. "What's wrong?" I suddenly wrapped my arms around his slim waist, and rubbed my face against his pristine white coat. "Blair Jenny, I was wrong. Please don't take what I said to heart, okay?" While I was anxious, he chuckled softly from above me. "Toby Ferguson, I haven't been outside, I've just been busy at the hospital, and didn't take care of your feelings properly. That's my fault. He gently pinched my cheek, and said softly, so, it's my lack of care that made you think like that. I was taken aback. An indescribable emotion surged within me. I was touched. How could he be so good? Who would have thought such a wonderful man was the one I met through arranged marriage? Now, we've only been married for 3 months. A few days later, Blair Jenny took 2 days off, claiming he wanted to maintain our couple's relationship. We decided to go on a date. In the restaurant, I looked at Blair Jenny with resentment, complaining, I can't eat this and can't eat that. What kind of date is this? I don't want to be with you anymore. Blair Jenny said helplessly, you just had your stomach pumped, your digestive system is very sensitive right now, so you need to eat light food. At that moment, his phone rang. It seemed to be a call from the hospital. He looked apologetically at me and answered the call. Bed 522's condition has suddenly worsened. Don't worry, notify Ella and the others to prepare for surgery. I'll call Dr. James to discuss it. As he spoke, he stood up and said to me, wait a moment, I'll step outside to take this call. I turned serious. It's okay, go ahead. Hospital matters are important. Less than 2 minutes after Blair Jenny left, I heard a familiar voice not far away, I've already had a meal with you, don't push your luck. I looked over and, sure enough, saw Joyce Toynbee's stern profile. His naturally imposing eyebrows were even more daunting due to his impatience. He glanced at his phone, ignoring the girl next to him who was pouting, and coldly said, if you want to shop, go find your sisters. Keep this up, and we're breaking up. Honestly, if you ignored his expression, the handsome man and beautiful woman standing together looked quite matched. Unfortunately, after so long, he still hadn't learned how to love someone properly. Some not so pleasant memories flashed through my mind. I took a deep breath, preparing to look away and pretend nothing was wrong. But he seemed to sense me, and our gazes locked. His eyes showed a brief flicker of panic, before he shook off the girl's hand gripping his arm and marched toward me. Toby Ferguson, what are you doing here? Isn't this a couple's restaurant? Suddenly, as if realizing something, he grasped my wrist tightly, his face darkening. Who did you come with? His grip was a bit too hard, causing me to frown. Let go, it's none of your business. I need to remind you that we've already broken up. The girl beside Joyce Toynbee, with red eyes, looked embarrassed and softly said, Joyce Toynbee, don't be like this. But Joyce Toynbee ignored her. He stared intently at me, gradually tightening his grip, as if determined to get an answer. In this standoff, Blair Jenny finally returned. Seeing this scene, he didn't hesitate and rushed to my side as quickly as possible. As a doctor, he clearly knew where to strike to easily disarm the other person. Joyce Toynbee let out a muffled grunt and released his grip. Blair Jenny didn't even look at him, gently lifting my wrist that Joyce Toynbee had gripped too tightly, his beautiful eyes growing increasingly displeased. Does it hurt? I inexplicably felt at ease and shook my head. Don't worry, it doesn't hurt much. It'll be fine soon. Joyce Toynbee seemed to be provoked by this scene, a heavy hostility quickly clouding his expression, and he nearly spat out, Toby Ferguson, who is he? Only then did Blair Jenny finally look at him. He wore a rare cold expression, his eyes icy, and his voice strained with suppressed anger. What did this gentleman want to do to my wife in front of everyone just now? Don't you think you should give me an explanation? Joyce Toynbee instantly froze, repeating the word wife under, I don't believe it. It's impossible. She's just angry that I haven't contacted her in so long and is deliberately lying to me. He fixed his gaze back on me, stubbornly staring into my eyes as if waiting for me to answer him directly. My mind was racing with thoughts. I exhaled, suddenly wrapping my arm around Blair Jenny's, looking up at him and smiling. Honey, didn't we say we'd go to the hospital for a checkup after dinner? The baby just kicked my belly. Let's go, or she'll start fussing again. This remark elicited various reactions from those present. Blair Jenny's repressed anger quickly subsided. He cooperatively glanced at my belly, reverting to his usual refined demeanor. All right, as you wish. Joyce Toynbee looked on in disbelief. When he caught sight of the bland yet clearly nutritious food on the table, he was completely stunned. I have a particularly strong craving for spicy food, which Joyce Toynbee knew all too well. I calmly observed Joyce Toynbee, who seemed to have confirmed something, his expression frozen in a daze, as I decisively left with Blair Jenny. After leaving, Blair Jenny didn't ask me anything. He appeared as usual, as if nothing had happened just moments before. Are you full? Would you like to try another restaurant? But the more he acted this way, the more anxious I felt inside. I looked up at him. Blair Jenny, don't you have anything you want to ask? It was strange how a perfectly fine meal had been disrupted like this. From his perspective, that person had an entangled relationship with his wife. Blair Jenny fell silent for a moment and sighed, I do. He leaned down to meet my gaze, his amber eyes filled with a gentle glow. But it seems my wife is already quite unhappy. I don't want to bring up these unpleasant matters and affect her mood. Besides, today is our date. Why waste time on irrelevant people? His words left me momentarily speechless. To be honest, Joyce Toynbee's presence had certainly made an impact. I thought I had hidden my bad emotions well, but he still managed to notice. For some reason, the pent-up irritation in my heart began to dissipate, and I shyly tugged at his shirt. Well, Mr. Manley, feel free to ask whatever you want. Blair Jenny chuckled at my teasing and didn't press further, gently taking my wrist in his hand. Let's go, my lady. We have plenty of time for our date today. After that, Blair Jenny and I went to the cinema to watch the anime I had been eagerly anticipating. He was completely focused, only glancing over at me when he noticed my gaze, softly asking what was wrong. I couldn't help but think back to watching movies with Joyce Toynbee, who was mostly disinterested, either staring at his phone or behaving inappropriately in the dim light. He would say to me, "You're an adult. Why do you like these boring things like a child?" But Blair Jenny was truly different from Joyce Toynbee. After the movie, while I excitedly discussed the plot, Blair Jenny didn't interrupt or dampen my enthusiasm. He quietly listened, responding patiently and providing emotional support that made me feel valued. My mood brightened further. Without even realizing it, I took his hand and said, "Let's go. Later we can stroll through that food street on South Copper Road. I have to tell you, there's a place with amazing roasted sweet potato skins." He let me hold his hand, and gently squeezed back, the corners of his mouth curving into a charming smile. "Have you forgotten you can't eat spicy or greasy foods right now? But it's all right." Then I watched, wide-eyed, as he seriously made mischief with that handsome, gentle face. "If you really crave it, I can eat it in front of you." "Me, hey." He met my complaining gaze with a light laugh. "Are you daring to eat mushrooms again after this?" I immediately turned obedient, pretending to be busy, looking at a couple not far away. Wow, look. Their lips are stuck together. The air froze for 2 seconds. I dug my toes into the ground, embarrassed and furious. What the hell was I saying? Blair Jenny hid the laughter in his eyes and hesitated, saying, "That's not good. It's public, and it would be a bad influence. Let's wait until we get home." Me. What do you mean, wait until we get home? No, I didn't mean it like that. His words were ambiguous, and just as I was panicking and trying to explain, he smiled lightly. "What are you thinking? I mean, if they can't help it, they can wait until they get home." Me. Then why hesitate? How can you use that gentle, harmless face to say such inappropriate things? I spent the next full hour sulking. Blair Jenny quickly admitted he was wrong, and I pressed, "I'm so upset. I need some delicious roasted sweet potato skins to feel better." Blair Jenny relented, "Just one skewer." I haggled, 2 skewers, 1 bite. After a day of fun, I couldn't resist falling asleep in the car on the way home. The car drove steadily and slowly. I had a long, beautiful dream, until a gentle whisper broke through my slumber. "Toby Ferguson, we're home." I frowned slightly, not moving. With a light sigh, I seemed to fall into a warm, solid embrace. As I caught a familiar and pleasant scent from him, I adjusted into a comfortable position, leaning against his shoulder and falling sweetly asleep. It was a manifestation of a trust in him that I hadn't even realized I had. In the drowsiness, I felt a warm touch at the corner of my lips, which lingered only for a moment. Sweet dreams, my wife. After that day, Blair Jenny and I tacitly never mentioned Joyce Toynbee again. In fact, given his intelligence, it wasn't hard to guess what Joyce Toynbee and I used to be. But since he chose to avoid the topic, He likely thought Joyce Toynbee's existence was insignificant and not worth the effort. Naturally, I had no reason to bring up something that could dampen our marital happiness. Just as I was about to completely put Joyce Toynbee and the past behind me, a call came in from an unfamiliar number. When I answered, Joyce Toynbee's hoarse voice came through. "Toby Ferguson, let's talk." It had been a while since we last met, and Joyce Toynbee had changed a lot. However, when I saw the bloodshot eyes and the noticeably thinner outline of his face, I felt no stir of emotion. "What do you want to talk about?" Joyce Toynbee stared directly into my eyes as if trying to find a hint of compassion. After a long moment, he hoarsely said, "Toby Ferguson, let's get back together." I couldn't help but furrow my brows. "Have you forgotten that I'm married? Besides, you've got a new girlfriend now. Don't you find it ridiculous to say such things?" Joyce Toynbee looked dejected. "No, that's not it. When we broke up, I sent you a lot of messages. I apologized, but you never responded. I got angry and found someone else to prove I could live without you. It turns out I was terribly wrong. I can't lose you. I know you and that man only met through a blind date, and you have no feelings for each other. The baby thing is fake too. You must be mad at me, which is why you're doing this, right? If you divorce him, we can go back to how things were before." I evaded his desperate attempt to grab my hand and laughed in anger. "You've been investigating me." Joyce Toynbee's voice was hoarse. "Toby Ferguson, I just don't want us to end like this." I sighed deeply. "Is it really worth all this over something so trivial? I've explained it to you so many times. What else do you want from me? Isn't it enough that I was wrong? This is your so-called apology. A casual, 'I'm sorry,' can't simply erase everything, especially when it implies I'm overreacting. What gives you the right to think your insincere apology deserves my forgiveness?" As for my marriage to him, it was a well-considered decision. The pregnancy excuse was just to make you let go. Just because there isn't a baby now doesn't mean there won't be in the future. What makes you think I'd be like you, using another person's feelings to vent my anger? Joyce Toynbee, you're too self-centered. I'm not as childish as you. Joyce Toynbee felt the coldness in my gaze pierce him and panicked. "Please don't say that, don't." Before I could react, he suddenly pulled me into a tight embrace. "Toby Ferguson, let's stop arguing, okay?" He rested his head on my shoulder, hugging me as if he wanted to merge me into him. I know I was wrong, truly wrong. With all my strength, I pushed him away and slapped him hard. Then I took out the necklace from my bag and threw it on the ground. "I came here to make it clear, first, don't disturb my life again, and second, I want to return this necklace to you." The red imprint of my hand gradually became clearer on his face, but he seemed oblivious, lost in staring at the necklace that had been carelessly tossed on the ground. Carefully picking it up, that was the star necklace he had personally put on me the day he confessed, with our initials engraved on it, symbolizing that we would always be together. The necklace had broken. The last glimmer of hope in Joyce Toynbee's eyes seemed to extinguish along with it. I calmly watched this scene unfold, and before leaving, I coldly said, "If I had known you came to say such meaningless things, I might as well have thrown it in the trash from the start." I don't know if it's just my imagination, but I feel like Blair Jenny has been acting a bit off these past couple of days. He's unhappy. As his wife, I obviously can't just ignore it. Blair Jenny, is there something bothering you at work? If something unpleasant happened, don't keep it to yourself. Talk to me about it. In response to my concern, he gently pinched my cheek and smiled. "Don't worry, I might just be a bit tired from work. I'll get back to normal." But I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't that simple. Blair Jenny is hiding something. He just won't tell me. While I was pondering a solution, that evening, Blair Jenny came back home reeking of alcohol, accompanied by his colleagues after they had a party that he had mentioned beforehand. "Why did you drink so much?" His colleague and friend sighed. "Did he not tell you? Our director has been trying to set him up with his daughter for a while. When he found out Blair Jenny got married without saying a word, he was furious. So today, he seized the opportunity to get him drunk. But it's strange. He usually seems easygoing, yet today he acted like a submissive little wife, drinking as he was told." I felt both heartbroken and angry. After sending Blair Jenny's colleague away, I turned to him with a serious expression. "Are you really that foolish? Next time you find yourself in a situation like this, don't just go along with it. Do you understand? Drunk Blair Jenny was surprisingly quiet, so quiet that if you overlooked his obviously intoxicated eyes, you wouldn't even know he was drunk. After hearing my words, he seemed to take a moment to react. His long black lashes fluttered, and he murmured, okay. A part of my heart suddenly softened. He looked so adorably cute. His skin was already fair, but under the influence of the alcohol, his handsome face had taken on a beautiful flush. With his eyes half closed and his long, thick lashes casting shadows, he resembled a well-behaved little child. Taking advantage of his dazed state, I couldn't help but playfully squeeze his face into different shapes. He let me squish and pull at his cheeks for a while before finally grabbing my hand and pulling me into his embrace. He buried his head in the crook of my neck, mumbling, "You can't do this. You can't always bully me just because I like you." His warm breath tickled my neck, sending shivers down my spine. I suppressed the odd feeling in my heart and laughed. When have I ever bullied you? I only dared to be mischievous because he was drunk. I wasn't sure if he understood, but he continued softly, "You're a married woman now. How can you hug other men besides me?" I was taken aback. Hey. Perhaps recalling some unpleasant memory, he tightened his grip around me. "That guy, you still have feelings for him, don't you? I saw it. You still keep that necklace engraved with both your names. And that day he clearly hurt you, and I was so angry. But why? Why did you stop me?" I listened, stunned, as he poured out all the things he'd been holding in while drunk, my thoughts a chaotic mess. After a long while, I felt a damp coolness on my neck as he murmured, "Can you be a little kinder to me?" The next morning, I found myself wide-eyed in surprise, staring at the now awake Blair Jenny. For the first time, I saw a look of embarrassment on his usually calm face. It seemed he was recalling last night's events. After a moment of silence, he pressed his thin lips together and said, "I'm sorry for losing my composure last night." I focused on his beautiful eyes, filled with complex emotions that I couldn't quite decipher. "When you were drunk yesterday, you asked why I was hugging other men. I thought about it and realized the only time was when I met that guy last time. What exactly did you see? Or rather, what did he misunderstand?" Blair Jenny's body stiffened imperceptibly, as if he hadn't expected me to be so straightforward about the matter. He lowered his gaze, his eyelashes fluttering slightly, and softly said, "I was actually there the day you met him. He approached me to discuss something about you, but when I arrived, I saw you hugging him. At that moment, I really wanted to go up and punch him, but I thought, if you..." He paused, as if he had lost the courage to continue. After a long silence, he quietly said, "If you really don't want me anymore, but at least, before we part, I wanted to maintain a little dignity. I didn't want to put you in a difficult position." A strange emotion spread through my heart. "So you just left, letting your wife hug other men?" With the experience from before, I naturally squeezed and twisted his handsome face in frustration. "You coward. If you had stayed just 2 more minutes, you wouldn't be thinking all these crazy thoughts. You didn't see that I was just pretending to hug him. I was clearly forced. Moreover, the reason I met him was to return the necklace he gave me, and to cut ties with him. If I had known this misunderstanding would arise, I might as well have thrown it in the trash right in front of you." "Blair Jenny, I have no feelings for that guy anymore. And the reason I stopped you from hitting him that day was that I felt he wasn't worth your time. I pretended to have a child to make him give up and not disturb our lives anymore. It wasn't because I wanted to provoke you." Blair Jenny fell silent. He stood there, a look of shock and helplessness passing through his eyes. I couldn't help but smile, teasingly saying, "What's going on, Blair Jenny? You usually seem so smart, but why do you get so silly with these questions?" But if we're being honest, I also made a mistake. I should have explained everything to you earlier so you wouldn't have had those misunderstandings. In response, he suddenly pulled me into a hug. "Toby Ferguson, since you're willing to explain these things to me, can I take that to mean you care about me a little?" I wrapped my arms around his slim waist and corrected him. "Not a little, a lot." As summer vacation came to an end, the kids were getting ready to go back to school. As a kindergarten teacher, I used to be unable to escape the phrase, "back to school," and now I still can't. It hurts too much. The good times are coming to an end. Blair Jenny, who could hear me sighing 800 times in a minute, helplessly said, "It's late. We should go to bed." I shook my head with a pained expression. "I can't sleep." After a moment's thought, I decided to sit on his lap. Ever since that day, our relationship as a couple has progressed by leaps and bounds, and now such intimate actions have become completely unconstrained. I took his long, fair hand and pressed it against my heart. "I've been feeling breathless and unable to sleep well these past few days. Blair Jenny, please take a good look at me. Am I seriously sick? Really sick?" I paused and added silently, "Like the kind that requires 2 months of rest." Blair Jenny pretended to check me over, his lips curving up in a slight smile. "It's just back to school anxiety." I exaggeratedly gasped. What should I do to relieve it? Should I delay? He chuckled lightly, interrupting me. "You could choose to do something else to distract yourself." Just as he finished speaking, a fleeting kiss landed on the corner of my lips. Like this, I froze, my heart pounding wildly. "How about now?" Before I could respond, another light kiss fell. "What about now?" "This is cheating, absolutely cheating." After a while, I finally snapped back to reality from his teasing smile, frowning. "Not enough. It has to be like this." Before he could react, I dove in and kissed his soft lips. He looked utterly bewildered by my sudden boldness, allowing me to take control. As I was about to pull back after indulging enough, he wrapped his arms around my waist and kissed me back slowly. The temperature rose steadily, and the air became thick with tension. I didn't know who started it, but our touches began to go beyond just kissing. Things gradually spiraled out of control. Just when I felt myself about to drown in it, Blair Jenny suddenly pulled away, very decisively, leaving me with the feeling that the passion had only been one-sided. I stared at his now alluringly flushed face, and once again my perception of him shifted. He was calm, yet everywhere else he seemed so wild. He gently kissed my lips and said softly, "It's late, you should rest early." As I watched him walk toward the bathroom to shower, I couldn't help but feel a pang of longing. Which couple, 6 months into marriage, still just chat under the covers? If Christopher knew, she'd probably laugh at me for life. I could already guess her words, most likely something like, "With such a handsome husband, why aren't you taking advantage of it? Is something wrong with you?" I suddenly grabbed him and pressed him back down. "The treatment isn't over yet. How does Blair Jenny plan to leave now?" I wanted to tell Christopher, I'm not a coward. Without waiting for his response, my hand had already found its way onto his impressively firm abs, moving down inch by inch. Blair Jenny moaned, catching my hand. "Stop it. If you keep going like this, I won't be able to resist." His eyes began to glisten with moisture from his difficulty in containing himself, and a lovely shade of red crept to his cheeks. I couldn't help but remember that night when he lay in my arms, looking so pitiful yet adorable. My movements grew bolder. I threatened, "Don't move." Words just rolled off my tongue. "I'm going to make you cry tonight." Blair Jenny stopped resisting. He trembled slightly, his thick lashes hiding the flicker of uncertainty in his gaze. "Okay, do as you please." The next morning, I woke up staring blankly at the ceiling. Blair Jenny kissed the corner of my lips and softly said, "You're awake. I made your favorite pumpkin porridge. Want to get up and eat some?" I ignored him. She simply closed her eyes, and a single tear of regret slowly slid down the corner of her eye. Who would have thought? After not seeing the kids for a whole summer, the first thing they said to me was, "Toby Ferguson, are you having a baby?" I was taken aback. They looked up at me seriously and said, "Toby Ferguson has gained weight, just like when my mom was pregnant." I replied, "Heh." And Christopher nearby chuckled, "Toby Ferguson is just happy fat, but I think it's only a matter of time." I sighed. I quickly nudged Blair Jenny to complain, "It's all your fault for making so many delicious dishes. Today, the kids said I've gained weight." Blair Jenny responded reassuringly, "You're not fat. You were pretty before, but too skinny. Now you look just right." I was having none of it. "Don't say anything. I've decided to eat only 1 bowl of rice tonight." Blair Jenny quickly replied, "I'm making shrimp in oil, braised eggplant, honey glazed chicken wings, and tomato potato beef stew tonight." All right, that was a knockout punch. I replied. Forget I said anything. We took the kids out for activities. Out of the blue, one of the children tugged at my sleeve and said, "Toby Ferguson, there's a strange uncle over there who keeps looking this way." But when I looked in the direction she pointed, there was no one there. I quickly told Christopher, who was staring off thoughtfully. "Did you see anyone suspicious? I hope it's not some creep trying to do something bad to the kids." And Christopher raised an eyebrow. "Don't worry, maybe she just mistook something for a person." I didn't think much of it. Before I knew it, it was time to go home. After successfully handing over the last child to their parents, I messaged Blair Jenny, "I'm so tired. I need to eat something delicious like braised ribs, and eggplant to soothe my weary soul." The reply came quickly, "Look up." Confused, I did as told, and then a tall, lean figure entered my line of sight. Joy surged in my eyes as I happily dashed into his embrace. "Why are you here?" Blair Jenny ruffled my hair. "I came to pick you up from work." And Christopher's voice floated over from behind. "Can't bear to watch. Really, you two are like a scene from a drama." I smiled and turned to wave at her. "See you tomorrow." "I'm going home with Blair Jenny now." I turned back and noticed Blair Jenny was staring at something in the distance, his beautiful eyes glinting coldly. "What are you looking at?" "Nothing." He slightly shifted to block my view and took my hand, intertwining our fingers. "Let's go home." I grasped his long, strong hand back and smiled. "Yeah, home." End of main text. Epilogue. At 25, Blair Jenny became the target of persistent marriage pressure from everyone around him. Faced with his parents' urging and subtle affections from the girls, he remained oblivious, fully absorbed in his work. He seemed gentle and polite, but when it came to romantic matters, he was distant. Until that day, while doing his rounds, he unexpectedly discovered that one of his little patients was missing. She was a 5-year-old girl, who had become increasingly withdrawn ever since she shaved her beautiful black hair for treatment a few days ago. He anxiously searched everywhere with the parents and nurses, fearing that the little girl might do something foolish. Fortunately, they found her in the end. She was nestled in the arms of a lovely young woman, quietly listening as she told her a fairy tale. That was his first encounter with Toby Ferguson. Even earlier than Toby Ferguson remembered, he stood quietly by, listening to the story along with the little girl. At the end, Princess Emily defeated the evil dragon, broke the witch's curse, and grew back her beautiful long hair. Of course, the most important thing was that her courage and resilience touched everyone. Finally, with everyone's support, she became the new ruler of the kingdom, and they all called her Queen Emily. The little girl's eyes sparkled with renewed hope. "Sister, can I grow back my beautiful hair too?" Toby Ferguson smiled, her eyes shimmering like a sky full of stars. "Of course you can. So you need to eat well, and take care of yourself. Be brave, strong, positive, and optimistic, and you'll become an unstoppable queen." After noticing him, she grinned playfully. "Okay, Princess Shishi, your knight is here to take you home." That day, the little girl obediently went back with him, but unfortunately, he was wearing a mask, and she couldn't remember what he looked like. In the following 2 days, Blair Jenny felt off. He sensed that something was missing. After much internal conflict, he decided to follow his heart. For the first time, he unceremoniously used his hospital connections to investigate her whereabouts. But the result was, "Oh, you mean that little girl? I don't have her records here. She came with her boyfriend. I have a good impression of that young couple. I think her boyfriend is some kind of race car driver. He got into an accident while racing, but luckily he only had minor injuries." That day, the little girl was so mad she said if he did it again, she would break up with him. After that, Blair Jenny stopped listening. He thanked the person and left, then threw himself into work wholeheartedly. He acted as if nothing had happened. His only friend who knew the truth watched as Blair Jenny became a tireless work machine, gleefully commenting, "Poor Blair Jenny," an outward personality leading to a lifetime of introversion. Time passed. During this period, his parents continued to incessantly urge him to marry. After receiving yet another photo from his mother, he absent-mindedly glanced at it. Instantly, his heart raced. That day, he finally learned her name. After breaking up with Joyce Toynbee, Toby Ferguson was in a terrible state for a long time. Her mother, worried that she was bottling up her feelings, began searching for various types of handsome men, hoping to distract her. Toby Ferguson was utterly annoyed, not wanting her mother to worry about her anymore. She pointed to one of the photos and said, "Let's go with him. After all, based on looks alone, he was the most pleasant to the eye." Thus, Toby Ferguson met Blair Jenny through their parents' arrangement. She approached the date with a "just getting it over with" attitude, but when they finally spent time together, she realized it wasn't as hard to accept as she had imagined. From beginning to end, it felt completely comfortable being with Blair Jenny. In fact, it was exceptionally pleasant. After that day, they successfully connected. They maintained a friendship but publicly claimed to be in a relationship to silence their parents' incessant chatter. Until, determined to move on from her past, Toby Ferguson invited Christopher out for a drunken night. When Blair Jenny received Christopher's call, he rushed over but was unexpectedly teased by Toby Ferguson in a tipsy state. Somehow, both sets of parents learned about it, and with one saying, "I want a title," and the other insisting, "I'll take responsibility," the marriage was quickly arranged. So when Toby Ferguson finally realized what had happened, she found herself unintentionally married. In truth, Blair Jenny had entered Toby Ferguson's heart long before she realized. On the day of their date, Toby Ferguson took a long, beautiful nap in the car. In the dream, there was no Joyce Toynbee, no bad relationship. It was a dream about Blair Jenny. When she woke up, Toby Ferguson felt a lingering sense of loss. She thought to herself, if only she had met Blair Jenny a little earlier,